It is Wednesday, November 12th, 2025, and this is a daily brief. The kinetic sanctions that Ukraine is imposing on Russia just keep coming. We're going to look at that, what they've done yesterday, what they did today. So this is additional footage of the Orsk refinery burning yesterday afternoon. It's again 1,000 miles from the border of Ukraine, and it's you can see they keep doing this. And yesterday, we saw this go overnight. So these were Ukrainian drones going off in different directions. I only have a few. And just like the other day when I said, well, here's the two that I see, but we'll find out more the next day. And we did. Okay, here we see overnight Ukrainian forces reportedly struck Russia's Lukoil Stavrolen chemical plant, a major factory that produces natural gas and key refined products like ethylene and polypropylene. So it was pretty significant. It was lighting up there. The factory was targeted again back in October, and late October is the last time that we saw this. And they keep hitting various places in these factories. Remember, the bombs that the munitions that they have on the drones are only so big. And particularly with like oil refineries, if the tanks are separated, you might only be able to hit a few at a time. Okay, this is governor of the Stavropol region, Vladimir Vladimirov, saying Russian Ministry of Defense air defense forces repelled a T attack by Ukrainian drones over the Budiansk military district. Debris from the downed drones caused a fire in the industrial zone. Fire crews and emergency services are working on the scene. According to current reports, there are no casualties, residential buildings are undamaged, and life support systems are operating normally. Please rely on official sources of information and not trust rumors. Okay, so everything's fine. There was just a little debris that caused something, but I mean, if you think that debris caused that, okay, that's fine. You're still getting the effect. Okay, what else is going on? Overnight, and Russia launched 121 attack drones, mostly Shahed, targeting Ukraine from multiple directions, including occupied Crimea. By 9 a.m., 90 drones were shot down. 31 made some kind of impact. So that's what the Russians were doing to the Ukrainians last night. Almost every night, our defenders, says Zelensky, our defenders of the sky are working to repel Russian attacks together with electronic warfare units, and that's what you're seeing in these images here. Electronic warfare units, Army aviation, and mobile fire groups. The results of interceptor drones are already significantly increasing, more than 150 since the beginning of the month already, including shootdowns tonight, and there will be more. Again, 150, it's November 12th. We will definitely continue to develop interceptor drone technology and train crews. So this is promising. I'm very hopeful for what interceptor drones will be able to do to combat what Shaheds have been doing to Ukraine for the last 3 years. Okay. Russians bombed central Kharkiv with drones, causing fires and injuring people. And we're seeing some of the aftermath here. And we're seeing this. The UN just traced Russia's human safari drone attacks in Kherson straight to Putin himself. Well, I mean, straight through the chain. The chain of command connects drone operators on the Dnipro's east bank to General Gerasimov directly. Here's the report. The report found that the attacks were carried out by drone units of the Russian armed forces based on the left bank of the Dnipro River under Russian control in Kherson and Zaporizhia Oblasts. Witnesses, this is in Euromaidan Press, by the way, witnesses said the Russian soldiers occupied vacant houses, positioned military equipment between civilian buildings, and operated drones from within residential, administrative, medical, and educational facilities. These units are part of the Dnieper Group of Forces commanded by Colonel General Teplinsky, who reports directly to Chief of the General Staff of the Army, General Valery Gerasimov, the commander of all Russian troops in Ukraine. Of course, there's always going to be a chain of command, but it seems like the human safari is more intentional than not. It seems like this is part of a effort by the Russians to intentionally cause this kind of trauma in Kherson. Russian FAB-3000 struck residential blocks in Mirnograd, Donetsk region. Putin's forces now use the FAB-3000, a 3,000-kilogram high-explosive aerial bomb, inside cities during assaults, scorched earth tactic that reduces cities to ruin. that's just a still frame. This is what it was before, and this is what it was after. But while you're seeing that with your own eyes, Ambassador at Large at the Russian Foreign Ministry, Murashnik, says that Russia is not aiming to make life unbearable for Ukrainians. No, no. Look at this. Heating is a parallel story. Russia is not aiming to make life unbearable for the Ukrainian population, he says. Russia does not strike Ukraine civilians directly. These are, let's say, indirect consequences for the population. That's an indirect consequence for the population, according to him. Okay. I mean, I can't even show you the picture here. Only one finger was saved on the boy's hand after a mine disguised as a 10 ruble banknote exploded in it. I mean, I'm not even sure what to say about that level of like barbarity here. The child was 9 years old. Only one finger was saved on the boy's hand. Again, a mine disguised as a 10 ruble banknote. After a 6-hour surgery, doctors managed to preserve only his right pinky. The other fingers had to be amputated. The bones and tissues were completely shattered. This is what Russia brings to Ukraine. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko warns Ukraine is facing huge problems with manpower as men continue fleeing abroad. Now, again, there's travel rights that are there for certain ages. He called now those that are fleeing without that's a whole different story. He calls for lowering the draft age, citing relentless Russian attacks and a growing imbalance in human resources. We've held the line for nearly 4 years, but it's getting harder, Klitschko says. All right. This is just driving through Kherson and seeing what you're seeing above the road is the drone netting in the city just to prevent attacks on that. Yeah. And that's what you're seeing everywhere in anywhere close to a battlefield in Ukraine. Let's look at the casualties day over day, 1,000 Russian casualties. That's about the average. 3 armored fighting vehicles, 13 artillery system, 87 vehicles and fuel tanks last night. Yesterday. Engagements above the 7-day average. Casualties are below it. Now, everybody wants to know about Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk direction, the enemy made 72 attempts to press our units. And these figures come out a little bit earlier because, and part of that is as the days get shorter, you have 16 hours of dark, and it's inverted from the summer where you had lots of light and now you have lots of dark. So these numbers come out sooner in the day. Okay, I just want to read this little bit from Euromaidan Press, and then I'll read one from the ISW. Most of Pokrovsk remains a gray zone. This was put out yesterday. Ukrainian and Russian positions are scattered across ruins, separated by streets or individual houses. Ukrainian forces hold the railway line cutting through the city as their defensive boundary, protecting the logistics corridor toward Mirnograd. The Russian forces control portions of southern and central sectors, but their grip is unstable. Ukrainian troops continue re-entering contested areas and fortifying strong points. The ISW came out either late last night or early this morning. This came out this morning, very early this morning. The rate of Russian advances in the Pokrovsk direction remains relatively slow, likely in part because of Russian military command, which continues to pursue grinding offensive operations throughout the theater. Other key takeaways: the Russian forces will very likely seize Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, but will likely take more time and suffer more casualties to do so than if the Russian military command focused more resources from elsewhere on the front in this direction. Russian forces are taking advantage of the foggy weather, and this has been a thing for the last few days. Foggy weather conditions that degrade Ukrainian drone operations to intensify offensive operations in the Huliapol direction and other areas of eastern Ukraine. And I'll talk about Huliapol in just a moment. The months-long battlefield air interdiction campaign, that's drones that are getting behind enemy lines, likely facilitated recent Russian advances, particularly in Huliapol. The Ukrainian forces recently advanced near Seversk. Russian forces recently advanced near Pokrovsk and Huliapol. So let's talk about Huliapol and what's going on there. This is Euromaidan Press. Ukrainian troops retreated from 5 settlements in Zaporizhia after days of intense Russian artillery strikes destroyed their defensive positions. Well, there was nothing left. They had to move back. Russian forces carried out over 400 artillery strikes daily in the Huliapol sector, Firing around 2,000 shells, the bombardment achieved near total destruction of Ukrainian fortifications, forcing troops to withdraw to preserve personnel. Ukrainian units left. Russian forces are attempting to move into these settlements, while Ukrainian troops continue fighting to prevent them from entrenching. With the withdrawal creates pressure on Huliopol. It's actually not Huliopol proper, but just north of Huliopol, and I'll show you a map in a moment. Russian units from the east are pressing to encircle the town and cut key supply routes leading from Pokrovsk in the north. Heavy clashes continue. Okay, so where are we talking about? So this is Huliopol, and what you see is above this. Now, this is today, and I'm sorry, this is last month, 1 month ago today, and this is today. 1 month, again, 1 month ago today and today. So you can see right here that they're making some significant strides, and there's not a lot until they get to a defensive line, which is a little ways back. So it's not great, but it's not a breakthrough like they have broken through a fortress city like Pokrovsk or something like that. Okay, from Donetsk orphans to Russian soldiers, how Moscow's decade-long militarization pipeline transforms Ukrainian children into occupation force. I just want to read like a couple paragraphs out of this from Euromaidan Press. Because this is really interesting. Ukraine faces a generation gap, Russian engineered through decade-long indoctrination campaigns. Since 2014, Moscow has deported children from Donetsk Oblast orphanages and shelters, subjected them to years of pro-Russian propaganda in cadet schools, and channeled them into military service. These two young men that you see here, the two young men and now of legal age, exemplify how children removed from Ukrainian institutions become part of Russia's occupation forces, potentially returning to fight against their homeland. And that's an intentional, ongoing effort, and it's only going to amplify over time, given that you have, at least 20,000 or so Ukrainian children in Russian control, and probably more like 35,000. We don't know all of them. And then again, there's 1 million children within those 4 oblasts that are now considered Russian. And so, yeah, that's where we are. Meanwhile, Russia buys 55% of everything related to prosthetics from countries that are at war with us, says Levanta Orlova, the auditor of Russia's accounts chamber. She said an 850 billion rubles, or 10.5 billion US dollars, is allocated for import substitution. We're now conducting an audit, and we will definitely look into this in detail. Okay. 2 issues here. 1, they have a lot of prosthetics, and there's a reason for that. And 2, they don't actually build it themselves. They have to import lots of it. So, yeah. Now, let's end with this. We're going to look at reading today's papers. This is Steve Rosenberg of the BBC does a great job. Just going to show you a little bit about what they're talking about as far as economics in Russia. My very next video is going to be looking over the economic problems that they're having over the last week or so, and it's getting bad. Let's listen to this.
In a moment, why this chap is watching the wall instead of the TV, a 24-hour blackout for SIM cards in Russia, and a warning against rehabilitating Stalin. First, Kommersant reports that the budget deficit in Russia is growing. The budget returns to a deficit. In October, annual budget revenues lagged behind expenditure by another 0.4 trillion rubles. The federal budget deficit grew by another 400 billion rubles to 4.2 trillion, around $51 billion, or 1.9% of GDP. According to updated calculations of the Finance Ministry, in the final 2 months of the year, the gap between spending and revenues will grow even more, up to 5.7 trillion rubles, or 2.6% of GDP. The reason? That's
not 2.6% of budget. That's 2.6% of all of their gross domestic product. Like that's amazing.
The irreducible level of required state expenditure amid reduced expectations for oil and gas revenues.
That's Kinetic. The Kinetic strikes, the Kinetic sanctions that Russia's inflicting on Russia, that's what's causing this.
And other budget revenues. Meanwhile, more taxes on the way. Moskovsky Komsomolets writes about a tax on gadgets. Russians need to prepare themselves for consumer electronics to go up in price. From the 1st of September 2026, foreign and domestic electronics manufacturers will be subject to a so-called technological levy. The measure, designed to support the technological sovereignty of Russia and the development of domestic industry, evokes strong associations with the previously introduced recycling fee for cars. In both cases, the direct effect is an increase in retail prices.
Yep.
It's not just importers who will need to fork out, but Russian manufacturers too, even those whose products are produced in Russia with Russian components and raw materials. The cartoon says it all, really. This fellow is wondering, shall I buy a new TV set? Too expensive. Anyway, why would I need to? I have a vivid imagination.
Yeah. So that's where the Russians are economically. I'm going to talk more about this in just a little bit. My very next video, I will talk about what's going on in the Russian economy. Let's end with this. Jake Bro has just crossed over his $6 million fundraiser. That's just incredible. Thank you to all of you, the 10,000 of you who have donated to that campaign. That's just awesome. Thank you, my friends, for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.